Hey guys, John here. So I have a funny story to share with you guys. I thought it would be kind of interesting. So I was thinking, I was like, okay, how do we all get into synthesizers or sound design? And I'm curious to hear how you guys got into it as well. But so mine's kind of funny because, like I said on some videos in the past, I got my first copy of FL Studio. I can't remember. It was like 2003 or 2004. It might have been like the end of '03 into '04, something like that. I can't exactly remember. So it's been so long. So based on that, I would start, there wasn't really, YouTube wasn't prevalent at that point. You can't really just look up a tutorial how to do things. So you kind of just figure things out. You learn good things, you learn bad things, so on and so forth. But I would always use the instruments that they had, kind of unknowingly that they were synthesizers. Like I was just like, oh, okay, so these plugins, whatever they are, they kind of look cool, and you can play in your keyboard, and they make cool sounds. You can click the arrow; it's a different patch name, and it sounds completely different. So cool. So I'd use different instances of those and just find stock sounds and kind of just put those together and call it a day. I would do that for years. And I still remember like looking at the original Citrus, how that looked. I was like, I don't even know what this thing is or what it does or what it's supposed to be, but somehow it makes sound that I can play. So that's kind of cool. I guess it's an instrument. I don't even really know what it is. So I did that for a long, long time. And I would learn the other ones. I'm like, okay, Toxic Biohazard has these sounds, SAR has these sounds, and you kind of get familiar with the stock plugins that come with those synthesizers, which for the most part it was fine, right? And then yeah, you kind of just see more synthesizers pop up. You see some hardware ones around. You're like, okay, so that's a synthesizer. That's what they used in the '80s to make synth pop or whatever, right? You don't really exactly know. So there's that. So so fast forward a little bit later on in my life, I would always still make songs. Mostly it was with guitar and like real instruments, guitar, bass, and I would use plugins to simulate drums or maybe some random instruments in Pro Tools. I think it was like Expand 2 that I used quite a bit. I just dial up sounds and kind of fiddle with the settings, but I didn't really see it like as a synthesizer that you can create your own sounds. It was just like, okay, this is the instrument that comes with Pro Tools, and it makes these sounds. Cool. What sounds are cool that I like that I can use in a song? And I'll do that again for a long time. And it wasn't until one day, a buddy of mine, we make our songs, we listen to our songs, and it's always a good thing. Because I tell people, if you make a song, show it to somebody else, because you're going to hear that song differently in the presence of somebody else. It's a weird psychological phenomenon. I don't know why that exactly is, but it's a real thing. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So as we're driving to go get some food, I was like, man, this bass in your song sounds really, really good. That's what is that bass? He's like, oh yeah, I made it. I'm like, no, no, no. Like, what do you mean you made? Like, did you buy wood from somewhere and you sanded a bass guitar? What do you mean you made this bass? What are you talking about? I didn't know you're a craftsman. And he's like, no, I made it in Serum. And it's kind of funny because I have Serum. Or at the time I had Serum. I mean, I still do, but I was like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. I have one of those as well. So it's kind of funny because I would use Serum, I'd use all those patches, but it didn't really cross into my mind. I was like, oh, so you can just make whatever sound that you want with this piece of software. I'm like, interesting. So that blew my mind. I'm like, you made this bass? So from that day forward, every single day for the most part of my life, I would study exactly what everything does, what each knob does, what this does, what that does, how does Serum work. So I learned Serum inside and out, and that was a plugin that, like I said in some other videos before, like I don't really use it nowadays, but it still carries a special spot in my heart because I learned so much from that synthesizer. So I think we can all relate to that as well. So after that, I would watch old videos from like the '80s or something, and just watch how these old videos that were filmed of how synthesizers work. I'd go back to these basics. I'm like, okay, so Serum is way farther in the future from where synths came from. So then you learn the old ones. You learn, okay, this is a Moog. This is how this works. Okay, that's how they did it. So I would just gather information, just spend hours and hours and hours of my life just stuck inside these software synthesizers. And it was so frustrating for them. And I'm sure we all relate to this. Like, what is an LFO? An envelope? Like an envelope? Like, do we put a stamp on it and send it? What do you mean an envelope? ADSR and then AD, like all these terms, when they're new to you, they're so frustrating because you're constantly trying to figure out what things do and how it works. What is modulation? Okay, that changes things over time. I think I got that. And then this modulator changes that modulator, which is on a destination. And it gets so overwhelming. But that was part of the fun for me. So I guess that's kind of my journey into it. I would see how this all worked, how you could put sounds together and create what you want. And then you'd realize, okay, so people are actually making the sounds that they want to hear. Got it. Okay. how do I do that as well? And I guess, like, that's kind of some of the motivation of this channel as well, because I know how frustrating and how annoying that path is. You have this software and you see these people using this like so fast, and they make really cool sounds, and you're like, I don't even know where to begin. Okay. I don't even know there's an init preset. Okay. You have an init preset now. And what do you do? Like, how do all these things work together? And what's the signal flow? Like, it's not really obvious that it starts with the oscillator. That's just kind of, I don't think most people know that going into it. So yeah, that's kind of the jumping into that I went through. And then from then on, it's just study every single day, read myself to sleep with manuals, and yeah, so on and so forth. And because it would bother me if there was some weird obscure parameter in any synthesizer that I wasn't exactly sure what it did. It would drive me crazy until I could finally figure out what it did. So if I have a new synthesizer or something like that, I have to know every single parameter. I have to know every modulation, how it works, how they work together, and then only then can I say, okay, now I can start designing patches. It's kind of weird, but anyway, that's just how my brain works. But yeah, the point of the video is to share a funny story of that. Like, how do you made a bass that's crazy, but also how did you get into this? What was your moment in your life where you're like, this is what I want to do? Synthesizers are cool. I like producing. I like making sounds. How did that happen? Because there's always some interesting story, and nobody really has the same story, I don't think. Maybe somebody does. There's a lot of people out there in the world, but who knows? But yeah, so let me know how you guys got started. And yeah, thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video.